in the 1950s, hotels were popping up all over the Strip.
But less than a mile from all that action, something else was being built.
Chris Matthews joins us with a unique history lesson.
That's right. You know, the cool thing is there's just a myriad of stories to tell about early Las Vegas, and it continues here. Since it's Derby week and the Run for the Roses is coming up Saturday, who knew Las Vegas had its own unique history with thoroughbred racing? Here's a story about Las Vegas you probably haven't heard, because in the blink of an eye, it was over.
This story begins in 1946 in Brooklyn, New York, a long way from Las Vegas. Joe Smoot and Hank Greenspun get word that Vegas is booming, gambling is legal, and opportunities are everywhere, so they head west in a red convertible. They arrive and go their separate ways. Smoot has visions of building a spectacular thoroughbred racetrack. He'd been involved with tracks in Florida and California.
He was never involved until they opened. So something always happened. Either he absconded or he was booted.
Some say a guy looking to line his own pockets. Greenspun later called him a lampster. Smoot sells stock to a bunch of Las Vegans.
He managed to get 8,000 investors to come up invest about $2 million for this track. But the problem was the track never really got built all that fast because there was embezzlement.
He can't account for $500,000 of it. He has no receipts, he has no canceled checks, and the judge is kind of ticked at him. He tells the judge, would you give a politician a check?
Smoot survives the angry mob of investors, but is booted off the job by federal judge Roger Foley. The project falls into bankruptcy. One of the trustees, Lou Smith, who started the Rockingham Park in New Hampshire, takes over the project.
He also was a bootlegger in the 30s who came across Meyer Lansky. And there's the Vegas connection.
Lansky convinced the mafia to place Bugsy Siegel in charge of Las Vegas and became a major investor in the Flamingo. His buddy Smith pumps $3 million more into the project, and the Las Vegas Park is born. They build it right where the Country Club, LBH, and Convention Center now sit.
By the time it opens, September 4th, 1953, there's $4.5 million into this track. The grandstand and the Jockey Club are painted pink, like the Hippodromo Rosado in Argentina, a big track at the time.
They didn't cut any corners. It was first class all the way. Some calling it the most modern track in the West. It had the country's only silver dollar turnstile. The soil was hauled in from an old Indian village 100 miles away.
I was supposed to stay back where the horses was around the barns, but they had the best barns you could buy at that time. I mean, that was a first-class joint.
It was a big track with the grandstand seating over 20,000. Opening day had arrived, but temperatures soaring over 100 degrees and only one way in and one way out. So many fans sitting in their cars in that extreme heat just turned around and went home, as did some of the owners with their horses. So only 8,000 show up and hardly enough horses on hand to open the gates. To make matters worse, the state-of-the-art Australian infield tote board was broken. PA system wasn't working properly, and the world's only one-of-a-kind $500 betting window machines malfunctioned.
So the big wheels have to bet with the commoners. If I want to make a $1,000 bet, I got to do it, 50 times over here with Joe Schmo.
Well, it's a mystery. It's a big mystery why the tote boards didn't work.
There is speculation that the mob, which controlled a lot of the casinos on the Strip in the mid-50s, didn't want to see a racetrack right next to their casinos, draining customers out of the hotels, and they may have been responsible for some of these hijinks.
Despite falling $150,000 short of breaking even on opening day, Las Vegas finally had its own thoroughbred racetrack. Even Hank Greenspun, who is now the main guy at the Las Vegas Sun newspaper and wrote his share of negative articles during construction, changed his tune.
He was very negative and ridiculed it. And then, of course, when it opened, he was nothing but applauding it, and hats off to Lou Smith, and this is going to be just what Vegas needs. And that's funny. Of course, don't blink, because it was gone before you knew it.
All right, coming up tonight at 11 o'clock. Now, during its short Unhappy Life, something remarkable managed to take place at the Las Vegas Park. It involves a jockey and a horse. And whatever happened to Joe Smoot, the conclusion on the life of Las Vegas Park tonight at 11 o'clock.
I can't wait to hear it. Thanks, Chris.
Thanks, Chris. Earlier at 5, we explained how horse racing got its start in Las Vegas, but it was gone in the blink of an eye.
Chris Matthews continues his story on the unique 13 days of the first and only thoroughbred racetrack in Las Vegas.
It all started with one guy, right? A huckster, actually, by the name of Joe Smoot, who comes to town with these grandiose plans to build A racetrack right here in Las Vegas, but apparently embezzled money from thousands of Las Vegas investors. Now, he was booted from the project, and Lou Smith rode into town, eventually building a beautiful full-scale thoroughbred racetrack. Las Vegas Park opened to a myriad of problems, however, and some speculated the mob was involved, but business and city leaders praised its opening. So now we take you back to September 4th, 1953.
The opening of Las Vegas Park was applauded in newspaper ads. It was hailed as the next big thing, the story of accomplishment, a great triumph over adversities. Casinos were sprouting up along the Strip, and the city welcomes a full-blown, state-of-the-art racetrack. But its grand opening wasn't so grand. Problems plagued the park from the start. Adults were angry, but young employees too busy with the horses to notice.
All I had to do is sit there with a team of horses ready to go out on the track and pull the starting gates, to put them in place where they went.
A tractor took care of most of the work. Raleigh loved horses, and the sights and smells of the track became part of the job.
Right after a while, you get used to that trumpeter out there and calling them to the track and all that stuff, and it's very impressive.
3 days after its grand opening for the anticipated 67 race meeting, the track shut down. Repairs were made to the tote board, betting machines, among other things. Racing resumed on October 10th, with some of the finest horses running in Las Vegas. Even the Horse of the Year makes a stop in Vegas.
Had to be Cal Housel that built the Tropicana. Had to have some real good running horses there. And
one of his best may have been a horse called Lefty James.
But this Lefty James was just a mule of a horse. He ran it more than 100 times. Well, that poor nag got the crud beaten out of it. But it won 3 times in 13 races, and you know, as far as a legacy of racing with Las Vegas, that is it.
Each win came with jockey Tony DeSpirito aboard.
Tony, in 1952, won 390 races as a 16-year-old apprentice. He gets Jockey of the Year.
He raced in New Hampshire, and track owner Lou Smith gets him to come out to Las Vegas. He goes by Desperado, paying little attention to racing rules, but wows the crowd. He liked women and Cadillacs.
Apparently went through Cadillacs like iced tea. One every month. He would wreck them, and he was as crazy on a caddy as he was on Lefty James.
In 1953, DeSpirito won 312 races, including those in Las Vegas. In 54, he runs the Kentucky Derby, finishing 13th before fading away bruised and broken.
And in 1975, his mother finds him on the couch of his Rhode Island apartment, dead. He had choked to death.
Back at the track, horse racing journalists from all over the country came to see the new Diamond in the Desert, but found fool's gold instead.
You could almost read between the lines where the guys writing the stories, they were just exasperated, and they were just, what am I doing here? Funny lines about, you know, this dog has had its day, and this can't last much longer. And
it didn't. 10 days after this jewel in the desert reopened, it shut down. Thoroughbred racing was gone in the blink of an eye.
The horse racing just didn't capture the imagination of Vegas visitors and locals unless it was inside of a race and sports book, and that will come later.
So would the Hilton, Country Club, and Convention Center. The track gave way to all three. 480 acres bought up by Joe W. Brown, and the racetrack was demolished in 1956. Thus ends the unlucky 13 days of blue ribbon thoroughbred racing in Las Vegas.
Short, unhappy life of a failed track, but somewhere Lefty James is smiling.
All right, as for Joe Smoot now, who brought the idea here but couldn't account for that $500,000 in investors' money, the 71-year-old died in 1955 in a free room at the downtown Grand Hotel. Now, after the Las Vegas Park closed, they ran some Indy races there and one regional NASCAR race. In fact, in that NASCAR race, the guy who won here never won another race in his entire career.
How about that? What a great story. I always thought the Country Club was there forever.
Forever, right.
Loved it, Chris. Yeah, yeah.
All right, speaking of sports, new fallout tonight.